I really love learning new skills, and I like to improve quickly. So I decided to find out what science has to say about accelerating the learning process. 6 weeks ago, a book was released that tries to consolidate all the evidence on how to get better at anything, but the answer's complicated. So I spent 40 hours studying the book, making copious notes, and trying to boil the learning down into its most concentrated form. In this video, I'm going to cover 7 evidence-based lessons you can use to get better at anything. And if you stick around until the end, I'll share a secret approach that I've used to convince my heroes to teach me and help me improve at a wide variety of skills. Whenever you start trying to learn something new, there are always so many problems to solve. Let's say you want to become an amazing public speaker. You need to figure out how to write a compelling talk, learn your lines, how to stand on stage, use a mic, overcome stage fright, and most people just get stuck in and start trying things out. Most of the problems you encounter have already been thought about and worked on by super smart people in the past. So before you get stuck in, go and find the best sources of information so that you can learn the fundamentals. Learning from the best source is easy enough, provided that you know what information you're searching for. But if you're totally new to a subject, sometimes you don't even know what words to put into Google. I recently learned how to bend steel nails and bars with my hand, and although I know a whole bunch about magic and performance, I know next to nothing about feats of strength. So I thought to myself, who do I know that might know something more than me about this subject? And then I remembered that Rob, who owns a gym that I used to train at in London, used to compete in grip strength sports. And I thought, well, that's probably quite similar, isn't it? I'll give him a call. He recommended that I spoke with David, who's basically the godfather of metal bending and has trained some of the strongest people on the planet. And he suspected that if I asked him nicely and pay him for his time, then he might be willing to help me out. So I just did that, called him up and asked him for help. And he was willing to provide it. Within a week, I had answers to all my questions. If you can afford it, hiring a tutor is a really smart move. It turns out that one-to-one tuition increases the speed at which people learn by 2 standard deviations. In layman's terms, it supercharges your learning journey like crazy. Experts in a given field are often not very good at explaining how to get better at it. So instead of just asking for advice in general terms, a better approach when you're asking experts for help is to ask them to demonstrate the skill for you and to talk through the decisions and choices they're making as they're solving problems on the go. And David kindly did this for me. I spent 3 hours with him in his gym, and by the end of that period, I had snapped a nail, cracked an iron bar in half, and felt like the Incredible Hulk. This is my dog Larry. He's very good at learning things, and he wants you to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe for Larry. When people get the basics down, their tendency is to often start trying to be original. But it turns out that's not the best strategy if your goal is to learn quickly. As you've learned the basics, you'll have lots of different answers to some of the problems you've discovered along the way in your head. But when you try and apply them in practice, you won't be able to access all that information because short-term memory is relatively finite like that. If you just copy what works over time through repetition, you'll start to learn why it works, and you'll be able to apply those lessons to your own original work later on. As the saying goes, you can't bend the rules until you know them. I actually use this technique in creating this video. Although I think my content is getting a bit better, my introductions are quite poor, and I'm noticing when I look at the data that lots of people leave before 30 seconds. So I looked up examples online and I came across some resources by Colin and Samir that basically gave a template for an intro that hooks people's attention right from the very beginning. And I just tried to put it into practice in this video. I don't know whether it's worked yet, but we will see in a couple of weeks' time. One of the standout lessons from this book is the need to create opportunities to succeed, particularly at the beginning. Success raises mastery expectations, and repeated failures lower them. If you think about it, this is just really intuitive, isn't it? If you get a little bit of success at the beginning of your journey, then it'll give you the motivation to keep coming back and trying to improve, putting in the work that will then increase your chances of getting better. But if you have your confidence knocked really early on, it's just going to increase the likelihood of you throwing in the towel. Getting better at a skill that needs to be acted out in front of people is particularly nerve-wracking because if you get it wrong, then it's just going to hurt. But unless you test your learning in a real-world environment, then you're just never going to master the skill. Just before the pandemic, I decided that I was going to become a street performer. So I spent weeks and weeks and weeks developing this show, rehearsing it until it was perfect. I was so unbelievably nervous about taking it out into the street. On the first day, I went to the pitch, it's a beautiful town square, and I started doing what I thought was going to help me build a crowd. It just didn't work. Nobody stopped. At one point, a little girl came over and gave me 5p, which is about 7 cents. And I felt so small. And then at the end of the day, I sat down having a beer with a friend, and I realized it actually just wasn't that bad. All the things I was worried about, I'd already experienced, and it was fine. So I came back the next weekend and I had another go, and I got just a little bit better, and I was able to put into practice some of the things that I'd done in rehearsal. I did the same weekend after, I got better and better and better. And by the end of the summer, I was doing something that I was really proud of. Okay, so here's the bonus tip that is not in the book. I mentioned that hiring a tutor is a surefire way of speeding up the learning process, but what if you can't afford to do that? Well, the obvious answer is you just ask your heroes to help you. I'm actually not joking. In all the creative pursuits that I've explored, and magic is the one that I've taken the furthest, I've met and become friends with my heroes, and they've helped me on my journey. I've been able to meet them because I've put in an unbelievable amount of work into what is a shared passion. I've studied their work, become deeply fascinated by it in pursuit of getting better. And in doing so, I've kind of got stuck along the way, and I've come up with questions that in the end, despite my best efforts, I haven't been able to answer by myself. And when I've hit these points, I've reached out to them. I've explained my situation to them politely. I've told them how much their work means to me. And I've articulated my questions in a way that makes absolutely clear that I have tried to solve the situation myself. When you get stuck, and you will, just ask for help. And if your experience is anything like mine, no matter how unlikely it seems now, then you might just find your heroes are happy to help.